Hello and welcome to another episode of United for a Healthy Stoughton. My name is Stephanie Patton and I'm the prevention coordinator for the town of Stoughton, and I'm really excited about today's show. I have two guests in the studio with me. So all the way on my left, I have John Mayo, who is a mental health clinical intern for the Stoughton Youth Commission. Did I get the mouthful correct?
You did. Yes.
I did. Okay, great. And really exciting, we have with us Ivanna B. And I want to actually thank both of you for being here and for John to helping to make this connection happen today. So without further ado, Ivanna V, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and let's start with who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Okay. In drag, I go by Ivanna B.
Mm-hmm.
I chose that name because it sounds like I wanna be,
Mm-hmm.
so I can be whatever I want. I perform mostly Taylor Swift shows now, so we will do the entire album start to finish.
Okay, now we're going to ask you at the end about where people can find you, but like clearly I need to bring my daughter to see you perform because that would be like the highlight of the year. Yeah.
Yeah, we do Taylor Swift shows start to finish. I started drag in 2018,
Okay.
I believe, so it's been about 6 years.
Yep.
And then COVID just kind of took a hit
Right.
on drag as a whole. I do a lot of emotional songs with the tears in my makeup. It's kind of emotional expression is my biggest performance. And I just like the creativity.
Great. Will you tell us how you got started?
Yeah.
How did you discover drag and how do you get into the world of drag and become a performer?
Yeah. I get that question a lot because not a lot of people know how to get started.
Yeah.
So I had always loved makeup. I have been doing my makeup religiously since I was about 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I even went to fashion school. I was very into the creative arts. And unfortunately, I had to leave fashion school, and then I was in a deep depression. I was just scrolling through the TV channels, and I found RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, that's so cool. I can do that. I love makeup. But there wasn't ever a female on that show. So I thought, oh, I can play around with the makeup, but I could never actually do that until I went to a drag show at Salem College, Salem University. And they had someone who identified as female. So then I finally saw myself represented, and it took me from playing around with the makeup in my bedroom to thinking, oh, I can do this, I can perform. So I kept playing around with makeup when I felt comfortable. I found the Providence drag scene, which is where I started drag.
Yep.
And I happened to be at the Free Play Bar and Arcade.
Oh, I know that place.
Yes.
Yes.
I happened to be there. It was a Monday night, and that was their game night. And that was their drag show every Monday. And I happened to be there with my friend. We stopped and watched. And the next week, I went back in drag. And then some local performers saw me, asked if I had performed, and then they told me about open stages. So open stages are places where you don't need to be booked to perform. You just bring a USB or a CD or something with your song. And there were 2 open stages in Providence. So I started kind of feeling it out, going, because I was so anxious I would never even go out by myself. And I didn't know anybody who'd want to come with me. So I started feeling it out, going to the shows, and then I joined the groups and I decided to perform from there.
Awesome. Excellent. So it's like open mic.
Yeah.
But you're bringing your own music and
Yes.
Yep. Excellent. And would you tell us a little bit about what you do like the rest of your time when you're not performing?
So I am a grad student. I go to school with John. That's how we know each other.
Know each other.
Yes.
Yep.
I am a counseling student at Bridgewater State.
Awesome.
So that's what I do in my free time.
Yep.
I'm a full-time student right now, so just committing myself to my summer classes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. And what about social work? I'm just curious, like it's an interesting combination of things that you are doing. So like, how did you find yourself also in social work and is there like a particular interest area that you have as you're studying?
So I was working retail for a very long time. I left college. Like I said, I went to fashion school.
Yep.
I was going for fashion business, and I left school And then I was just doing retail for a long time, and COVID hit, and I realized I can't do this anymore. Retail is a really tough beast.
Yeah.
And it really kind of breaks your soul. So I realized I didn't want to do that anymore, and I went back to school. I got my undergrad at SNHU in human services because I knew I wanted to help people, but I wasn't sure what kind of track I wanted to do. So human services gave me the base knowledge to be able to transition to a bunch of other places. And I decided I wanted to help people because I went through a really tough time with mental illness and I wanted to be the person that I wish I had to help me through things and try to fight the stigma of mental illness, especially because I was already doing drag when I went back to school. That community is so burdened by mental illness. It's so prevalent in the LGBTQ plus community that I knew I wasn't alone, and I felt accepted, and I wanted to help continue to create that community to help other people feel accepted. So I ended up going into mental health counseling.
Cool. Excellent.
Yeah.
Great.
And I would love to work with kids and adolescents because, again, that's where most of my struggles lay. So I wanted to, again, be that person for those kids.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you for sharing all of that. Awesome. All right. I'm going to turn it over to John to ask a question.
Yeah. No, thanks for joining us and, having this conversation. I think it's awesome that you're able to come and talk more about drag performance and what it means for you and sharing all that. So thank you for sharing what you did. And I like you said, I know you personally, and I know you're a very creative person. Your makeup is fantastic.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so drag. I've been to many drag performances across the country personally with my friends, even as far back as undergrad at Bridgewater State many years ago. We've been doing.
We won't say how long.
A long time. But, Bridgewater has been doing a drag show there for as long as I can remember. Student run and everything. So it's always been a great art form that I've enjoyed watching, and I really like watching performances anyway. And you as a creative person, can you tell us a bit more about the creativity that goes into drag as an art form?
Yeah, so obviously the makeup is a huge creative expression. Everybody has their own style of makeup, and it's very unique to each queen. We all kind of end up with our own staple, what we're known for. So mine is the tears. I will go out without them, and one of my friends will be like, I don't want to talk to you until you put the tears on. Or I'll go out somewhere outside of drag and no one recognizes me, which makes me think, oh, I did a great job. So people can't tell exactly what I look like without all this on. It's the creative expression. It's just drag as an art form is so expressive, and being able to channel all your emotions and your creativity in your performance. So when I was doing open stages, if I was having a really, really tough day, I could go out on stage, perform a really sad song and kind of have that catharsis of get it all out there and then I'm fine after. And it was just really powerful to be able to do that. And then you'd have other people come up to you saying I'm really glad you did that. I felt I could feel that coming off of you. And yeah, it's just a great way for the self-expression and the makeup, and it takes a long time. And people don't understand how long it takes to get the makeup done, and how long people practice doing it. So
how long does your makeup take?
Yeah,
for you?
I was wondering that exact thing. Yeah.
Some people it takes them 30 minutes, some people an hour. Mine takes me about 2.5 hours.
Wow. That's a commitment.
That's a lot.
It depends on how long it's been since my last performance or how in a rush I am. I can kind of putz around, and it can take me 4 hours because I'm not trying to rush. I'm I can take my time. I can experiment with things. The more often you do it, the faster you get at it. So before I started doing the tears, this was a rebrand for me a few years back. And before I did that, it took me 45 minutes because I was just doing it 3 times a week.
Okay.
So it was pretty quick. You end up like a paint by numbers situation
Okay.
where you just slap it all on your muscle memory. I could probably do it with my eyes closed sometimes.
Gotcha.
But now that my shows are a little farther between, I need to really allot myself like 3 hours.
To get it done. Yeah, I can just sitting here, I can tell how detailed it is.
Yeah.
You know, and like how much work goes into it, because it's not just, you know, like your eyeliner is not just one color. Like there's a lot of shading,
Right,
in there,
right.
which if anybody's ever done any kind of, you know, whether it's makeup work or just painting, like that takes a while to get right.
Yeah,
Right.
there's about 6 colors in my eyeshadow.
Wow.
And it's the blending and experimenting and, oh, this isn't quite right. So you add more of it and then you're just going back and forth.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Awesome.
So you told us a little bit about how you got started. You know, can you tell us a little more about like why you and maybe some of your other friends who perform, you know, why do people generally perform in drag?
That is a really good question. So I know a lot of people start drag because they almost want to put themselves out there more and they don't know how. So then if you start drag, it's like putting on a mask and nobody knows who you are. So you can be whoever you want to be. It's kind of like how in counseling you can try things out with clients. In drag, you can almost try out how you want to act, try out new things, because most of the people that I would hang out with in drag, a lot of them did not know me in my personal life. So if I messed up, if I didn't like something, it's not like they know that's how I actually act. It's a really great way to build your confidence. When I first started, Ivanna was a completely different person from who I am in my daily life. And I used that to kind of, again, try things out, build my confidence. And then I always thought of her as somebody completely different. I'm either Ivanna or my daily life. And then the more I did drag, the more they kind of came together. And I was able to emulate the things I really liked about the Ivanna persona in my daily life.
Yep.
So I think a lot of other people do drag for a very similar reason. And just the creative expression and being able to form a community, because if you're in the LGBTQ plus community, there's obviously the bigger community, but as soon as you're involved in drag, it gets a lot closer because you all have very similar problems, or you're all performing at the same shows pretty much. So you end up very close to a lot of people. And then I know some people continue to do drag just because of the community. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah.
Excellent. Great. So I would love to talk a little bit about some of the misperceptions that people might have about drag, and so when they imagine it, the kinds of things that they think about. And even before the show started, like we had a conversation about like who does drag, and you even alluded to it in your story about like when you were watching RuPaul's show that you didn't really see folks who sort of looked like yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so can you share with us some of the things you hear, some of those misperceptions, and let's debunk some of those and talk about why they might not be entirely true.
Yeah. So the biggest one, like I kind of alluded to, is that most people assume that drag queens are cisgender man. That everyone identifies as a man, or a lot of the time people will assume I am transgender because I do drag. Like, that's not the case. So a lot of people just assume that you have to be male to do drag. Especially female presenting drag. If I tell somebody I do drag, they automatically think it's a drag king. Because one of the other big misperceptions is that to do drag, you have to dress as the opposite gender. Which for a long time, that was what most people were used to, was anybody born female would be a drag king and anybody born male would be a drag queen. I didn't want to be a drag king. The makeup was not it for me.
Not as fun.
No, it's not as fun. It's not as colorful. It's like masculating yourself. So I wasn't a fan of that. I like the bright colors and playing around with eyeliner and eyelashes, and that's why I did that. So most people assume that it's a man who's doing drag. I've been booked for a show and somebody said that they were impressed until they found out I was a woman. There's a really big stigma against women who do drag, and it's almost like we're held to a much higher standard than men who do drag. So I know some who, they'll just walk around lip syncing. They're not doing any stunts. They're not necessarily in a really flashy outfit, but they just walk around, interact with the audience, and have that pure, raw emotion. And they'll be praised and applauded and booked for endless shows for that. But I do the same thing, and I'm told I'm not doing enough. So that's a really big hurdle that a lot of female presenting queens have had to overcome. The shows that I'm in now, my showrunner, Candy Dish, she actually purposely goes out of her way to book people who don't get booked a lot because of their gender identity.
That's really interesting that is, I guess, I mean, it's also like speaks to the limited amount of information I think a lot of us have about drag. And so I think that's particularly why I was excited to have this conversation today. I think those are the kinds of things that, you wouldn't really think about, but that must be really challenging.
Yeah, it definitely is really challenging. Again, just feeling like you're held to a higher standard and you kind of feel excluded, especially when I would come outside of drag to events. I would hear some things that people would say about me, thinking that I'm just a straight girl who's pretending to be part of the community, who's taking up space from another performer. I'm like, you don't know me. You don't know who I am. I've also been touched inappropriately because I am a woman, and some people will say, oh, I'm gay, it doesn't matter. I'm like, that's not okay anyway.
Right.
Or just because my body is real versus padded doesn't mean like there's no difference. You shouldn't touch somebody inappropriately, even if it's fake.
Yep.
But I think along with that, another big misperception is that drag is sexual. It's not inherently sexual, while there are a lot of people who do wear more skimpy outfits and they do perform very risque numbers. That's not the community as a whole. I think the majority of the community is actually leaning more comedy or realism or fashion. They're not trying to be sexual, when again, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody can perform it any way that they want. But I think that's a really big thing that people assume out of drag.
Yep.
That's a big misconception.
Yes.
It's like theater, right?
Yeah.
Theater itself is not inherently sexual, but there are plays and shows that are.
Right.
It's the same thing with drag performances.
Well, and I think about too some of the popular media or movies that have portrayed drag, and I don't know that there are that many that are really well known, but there are a handful, and I think
not
that
necessarily presented positively,
right, or reinforce some stereotypes.
Yes.
I think that you were just talking about sort of who performs and what that looks like. And, yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that as well. Yeah. All right, John.
Yeah. So, I mean, moving from misconceptions, we see a lot in the news about like drag story hours and story time with kids in libraries and stuff, which I think is fantastic, and I think we should be doing more of. And I think a lot of parents will ask questions about, well, how can I talk to my kids about, drag performances and drag kings and drag queens, and what would you say to those parents, or, how would you, share with, different age groups about drag and the art form and all that.
Now we're pulling in some of your social work
Yeah.
stuff too, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of the like hostility of drag queens and children combining comes from the assumption that drag is overtly sexual. And I think we just need to get over that hurdle of assuming that it's sexual, because like you said, there's drag queen story hours, which I've never done, but my drag mother has. She does them all the time in Connecticut. And it's just somebody in a costume. Really, I find that kids are the most accepting of it. They need little to no explanation. I asked my boyfriend about this question yesterday, and he said, well, no one explained clowns to me when I was a kid, and that's kind of the same thing.
That's honestly, it's a great analogy, right?
Yes,
because
like
it's
a lot
someone,
of stage, it's makeup.
right? It's
Yes.
someone performing to entertain other people.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
You have a stage persona.
Yes, and he is the most supportive person of my art. He comes to all of my shows and he watches me get ready. And yeah, I mean, I never took offense to somebody calling me a clown. I mean, I probably put more makeup on than a clown does.
Well, you probably take more time.
I probably,
precision,
yes, I definitely take a lot more time. The tears that I do actually are kind of reminiscent of the crying clowns, but also just my overtly emotional persona anyway. Yeah, they usually don't need a lot of explanation. If you just say it's someone in a costume, they're dressing up. They like to have fun this way, especially to young kids. They don't need a lot.
No.
Yeah.
No.
They have great imaginations.
Yes.
You know, I work with so many kids at the Youth Commission because, you know, I do psychotherapy work with kids under the age of 18. And I find that the younger my clients are, the more creative their activities are and the more creative their brains are. And it's easier for them to understand. You're right. It's the older they get, they
question more the logistics of it when they get older, which that is definitely a private conversation.
Sure,
that is something where if there is a drag queen story hour or there's a local all ages performance, if a teenager is interested in drag, they can absolutely go up to a performer and ask those more logistic questions. As long as they lead with, hey, I'm interested, I'm not trying to pry, I might think about performing, or tell me a little bit about it, they will be happy to answer. So that's where you kind of need to ask the questions to the person who is in drag. And parents of those older kids can try to find maybe local events so that they can get that correct information. And for parents, I think we also need to not assume that somebody who is in drag is trans, because that's where some people get hung up. Like, you do not have to talk about anybody's private parts.
It's true.
When you talk about drag, you can just say somebody is dressing up. There's no need to mention any of that stuff.
There's no need to assume anybody's gender ever.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that is sometimes where parents get tripped up, or they feel like they are supposed to have that question, or they think maybe that's what their child is asking. And I think what you just said was perfect. Sometimes I think we over-explain things to kids.
Yes.
And we start to like give them all this information. They're like, I didn't really want to know that. Like,
No,
it's too much
they never
information.
thought about it. They never cared about it. They just,
it's somebody dressing up in costume.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like you answered my question. you know?
Yeah, I think wait until they actually have a specific question to bring up that information versus trying to unload everything at once, thinking they're going to have that question. Wait until they actually ask.
Yep.
Right.
And then answer what is in front of you. I think, particularly with younger kids.
Yeah.
I think that's
And I don't know is a completely valid answer. Or I don't know, let's go find out.
right.
Yeah.
That's a completely valid answer.
Yep.
That is a great thing for parents to realize. That it's okay to say to your kids, I don't know. But we can look it up.
Right.
We can ask somebody.
Right.
Or if it's at a local event, like, oh, I don't know, but let's go ask them.
So I have a question. You mentioned a little bit ago your drag mother. Who is that person? What do they do?
Her name is Giganta Smalls. So my full drag name is technically Ivanna B. Smalls.
Okay.
She is pretty much Connecticut's like leading plus size drag performer. She is well over 6 feet tall, and she is a large woman. And her brand is kind of like being a child's drawing come to life.
Cool.
She has, again, massive eye makeup like I do. I didn't necessarily get that from her, but a drag mother acts as somebody to kind of run ideas off of, to kind of help guide you through the drag scene. And if you live in a similar area, they can help point you in the right direction of shows, or you can ask them for advice. It's a motherly role of, hey, I don't know what to do. Can you help me out? I would be in drag competitions and I would send her my playlist or like my mixes before, and she would give me critiques on it, or she'd tweak it. So she adopted me. I didn't know her before I started drag. I was probably a year into drag before she adopted me, but she kind of helped me, and sometimes I'll perform in Connecticut.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking about, and we're already almost at the end of the show, which is, this happens, I told you, it happens every time. I think part of the reason for doing this now and having this conversation, so one, like the last question about talking to younger children, we recently were doing some outreach at Stoughton Pride, and we were fortunate enough to have some drag performers there, and I actually had a parent, whose daughter was really curious, like say to me, like, oh, I'm really interested in learning more about this and how to talk to my child about this, and I'm really glad that Stoughton is showcasing this form of art as part of Pride Month, and so that was one piece. But I also really want to appreciate and sort of uplift how you were really talking about what sort of finding your passion and what that did for your own mental health. And so I think regardless for folks of what their passion is and how it's really helped you, so thinking about like sort of integrating these two big pieces of who you are, and how they've sort of supported each other and brought out like all of these positive strengths, I think is really great. We are talking so much about mental health and all of those pieces here, particularly with adolescents, and the show is all about like health and being healthy, and so I just want to like really make that clear for folks too who are watching, like that's I think a really, really important theme here, in addition to really just getting to be curious and understand an art form that I think a lot of us don't know a lot about, but certainly want to learn more. So I feel like that also is a really good segue for you to tell us where we could find you performing. So if people at home are watching and they're like, oh, okay, drag and Taylor Swift, and like now I'm really, really interested, like where can we find you?
Yeah, unfortunately, most of the shows I do right now are 18 plus, and one venue is 21 plus. If there was to be enough interest, I have a good relationship with the person who runs our shows. So I could probably ask her for us to do more of a family-friendly environment. I'm not booked for anything for the rest of the summer because doing drag in the summer is brutal.
Oh, I'm sure it's very hot. It's very hot today, and I can't imagine. It
gets very, very hot. Usually I'm in several pairs of shapewear, several pairs of tights. The wig holds in a lot of heat. So it's a lot. Normally when I'm in drag, you can't see the tattoos on my legs. There's that many pairs of tights on.
Wow.
So it's kind of brutal doing drag in the summer. So we're not doing any of those shows for the rest of the summer, but I perform at Jack's Cabaret in the basement. So it's called Jack's Underground in Boston. I don't remember. It's on Broadway. I know that.
People can look it up.
Yes. And then I perform at Mirabar in Providence. That one's 15 Elbow Street.
Okay.
Those shows are 18 plus. The ones in Boston are 21 plus.
Okay. All right. But there are lots of family friendly opportunities too for folks. Like we were talking about story hours, which are usually geared more for younger kids. I know there's a place in Taunton that was hosting those recently. Pride Month just happened, but I think there was a lot of opportunity for sort of more public drag performances. But
and in the school year, a lot of younger kids can still go to like college shows because even though it's a college, younger people can go. I brought my 13-year-old sister to a college drag show. So it's kind of open to everybody. Those ones are definitely a little more family friendly. So I know that's not now, but it's an option during the school year.
People are curious. That's something they can look into. Awesome. Excellent. I want to thank both of you for being here with us today. And I really appreciate the honesty and the conversation. And thank you so much for putting on all of the makeup and coming out on a day that is really crazy hot.
I borrowed my mom's car with the AC for that.
Yes. The AC is definitely going to be key for today. And so thank you again for being here. And, if people are interested in learning more, they can reach out and we will connect. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.